Good evening. Welcome to the monthly business meeting of the Unified Government of Athens-Clarke County. Thank you for joining this evening. We appreciate you being here and sharing your time with us and being interested in the proceedings of your local government. There are agendas on the table just to the right outside the exit doors if you'd like to follow along with us. And for those who are accessing us remotely, you can get an agenda from the website on Athens-Clarke County. Excuse me, let me start over again. This is a new site, so accgov.com. You can access an agenda there. If you have a cell phone or any other electronic devices with you tonight, please turn them off or to silent. There'll be 5 opportunities for citizen input tonight. The first are consent agenda, items 1 through 4. Then we'll have a public hearing on community block development grants, annual action plan, then new business items, items 6 through 8, and then recommendations from our planning commission, which are 9 and 10. And then there's one final opportunity at the end of the meeting that any item that's not on tonight's agenda, you may come to the podium and address us on that. Our rules of commission allow citizens 3 minutes for comment. There's a timer on Ms. Spratlin's desk that will turn yellow at 2.5 minutes. So please have your remarks finished before the light turns red at your 3 minutes, so there'll be no need to interrupt you. And before we start our meeting tonight, back up just a minute, tell you that I know that there's several different opportunities for speaking to us tonight, and I'll let you know as each of those come up so you know when it's the appropriate time to come to the podium. Before we start our meeting tonight, I'd like to ask Chief Scarborough, our fire chief, to come forward, and we're going to recognize some special people tonight.
I want to share with you what happened probably about 3 weeks ago in our community. A quiet, rainy Sunday afternoon was shattered by a vehicle crash in Athens on February 11th. It was around 5:45 p.m. that a violent 2-vehicle head-on crash occurred on Lexington Road near Athens Paint and Body Shop. The 911 caller was frantic as she described a Jeep on fire, injured people, including a small child that was not moving, and some of the people trapped inside the heavily damaged vehicles. Fire department, police, and EMS were dispatched to the scene by Athens-Clarke County 911 to find a Jeep on fire and several critical injuries, including a 4-year-old child that was not breathing. The front half of both vehicles were crushed all the way back to the dashboard by the force of the collision. Emergency responders worked feverishly to extinguish the fire and care for the injured, who were ultimately transported by ambulance to the hospital. While our first responders did a great job to make a difference on this emergency, and they did, that's not who we're here to recognize this evening. Our community's emergency medical system is much more than just our 911 center and first responders who go to these emergencies to help. It's also members of our community who decide to get involved and make a difference. There were 3 members of our community who happened to be on Lexington Road that fateful Sunday evening when this vehicle crash occurred. Ms. Vicki Bishop, Mr. Michael Derricott, and Ms. Emma Strong. On that day, these 3 citizens chose to get involved and help people they didn't even know. Ms. Bishop, a nurse, provided care for the injured child and was doing CPR when our first responders arrived. Mr. Derricott, a father and husband, pulled the injured driver out of the burning Jeep. Ms. Strong, a UGA student, helped pull several out of the injured out of cars and helped open a door. The courageous and selfless actions of these 3 citizens saved lives and deserves our recognition and thanks tonight.
Kind of sends chills up your spine hearing that, doesn't it? Would our firefighters that were on the scene at this instant please come forward and join us at the front? And also, if any of our other first responders who were there are here tonight, I don't know that any are, but would love to have you come forward too. And Mr. Derricott and Ms. Strong and Ms. Bishop, would y'all please come forward too? There's not really anything of much value that I can add to the beautiful statement that Chief Freeman just made. Chief Scarborough. Freeman's our police chief. Chief Scarborough just made. But I do want to remind us to look at, these are just 3 ordinary citizens. And most people, when there's danger, tend to run away. And our firefighters here respond running toward danger all the time, as do our police and our other first responders. But ordinary citizens are not trained to put themselves in that kind of danger. So this is just the most amazing act of heroism that I've experienced. So I'm so happy to be involved in presenting a Citizen Award to each of you. Miss Emma? Emma's a student at the University of Georgia. Miss Vicki Bishop? Bishop just happened to be a nurse, and because she was there, we got a child alive that probably would not be otherwise. And this is good. And while they're being seated, I'd also like to say thank you to our firefighters who do this on a regular basis. But that's what we expect of you guys. Thank you. What an inspiring way to start our meeting tonight. I'm proud every day to get to be mayor of this wonderful city, but when something like this happens, and of course it happens very rarely, I feel like I'm probably the luckiest mayor in the whole United States. So thank you for everybody that was involved in that. Ms. Braddock, would you call the roll for us, please?
Dickerson.
Here.
Link. Here. Wright.
Present.
Bailey.
Here.
Neesmith.
Present.
Bell.
Here.
Harrod.
Present.
Kurtz.
Here.
Hamby.
Here.
Thank you. And before we approve our minutes tonight, we need to make a correction to the August 1st, 2017 minutes regarding special use approval for the 387 South Millage Avenue. A CDO was adopted at the meeting, but the ordinance did not reference the correct date of the revised site plan. So there's a memo of explanation that all of our commissioners have seen on this earlier, and I would entertain a motion.
Motion for acceptance with those revisions.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Have a motion second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Do we have any written communications, Ms. Spratlin? Great. Well, we start tonight's meeting with our consent agenda, and these are items that have been reviewed at least one time in prior meetings and are offered for consideration as one item, and that's items number 1 through 4. If any citizen would like to comment on one of those items, this would be the time to come to the podium and take your 3 minutes if you'd like to talk about them. Anybody want to speak to items 1 through 4? Okay, we'll come behind the rail. Would any commissioner like to remove an item? Okay. Can I have a motion?
Motion for approval of the consent agenda, Madam Mayor.
Oh, and we have an ordinance, Mr. Behrman.
Okay.
Second.
An ordinance with respect to establishing residential parking permits for Cobb Street Residential Parking District to include the 700 block of Cobb Street between its intersection with Hillcrest Avenue and its intersection with King Avenue, the 900 block of Hill Street between its intersection with Hillcrest Avenue and its intersection with King Avenue, and the 100 block of Hillcrest Avenue between its intersection with Hill Street and its intersection with Cobb Street, and for other purposes.
Thank you. We had a motion. Did we get a second? Okay, Ms. Terry. Have a motion second. All in favor of adoption of the consent agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll now move to our public hearing, and tonight we have an action plan for the Housing and Community Development Department for the 2019 Community Development Block Grant money. If anyone would like to speak to that item, it's item number 5 on your agenda. If you'd come forward, we'd be happy to hear from you. Anyone want to speak to that? Okay, we'll come behind the rail. Any commissioner would like to address this item? You have a motion?
Motion for approval of the plan.
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the next items we have are under old and new business. Let's see, let me make sure I got the right one. Under old business, and these are items 6, 7, and 8. If anyone would like to speak to one of those items, this would be the time to come forward. Anyone wish to speak to 6, 7, or 8? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Start with item number 6. Would any of our commissioners like to address that, Mr. Harrod?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There was some questions about this earlier on today, and I think the manager would like us to hold it for 30 days, so I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Have a motion, and a second. All in favor of holding that item?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 7 is our 800 megahertz radio system upgrade agreement. Any discussion on this item? Motion?
There were some questions that I had asked, Blaine, perhaps you sent them, the answers?
Yes, sir.
Oh. Maybe you might want to address those a little bit
Okay.
for us.
One second here.
Sorry, Blaine, are you about to address that item?
Yes.
Okay.
Y'all asked, as in the last one, a couple of good questions here. One of the things you wanted more detail for each upgrade and what are we buying, and this is a system upgrade agreement. It's different from our maintenance agreement. The purpose of this agreement is to keep the radio system updated to the latest versions of software and hardware needed to maintain the highest levels of support and availability over the 10-year period. We are purchasing the less expensive option, which provides an upgrade every 2 years, but you see an annual payment because it's spread out. Motorola uses an internal tool that takes into account our existing hardware and software and calculates the amounts necessary to upgrade the system over the designated amount of time. And there's also the increased amounts that you're seeing into the 10 years represent some escalations in labor costs that are expected to occur. So quite simply, the maintenance agreement is more for preventative maintenance and repairs, and this is for upgrades, incremental upgrades for software and hardware, so that we don't have an overcorrection, say, in 5 years where things have gone past their life.
I'll move for approval.
Okay, have a motion?
Second.
A motion, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will now go to our recommendations from our planning department, and they're,
Service delivery strategy.
oh, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself. Item number 8, which is the adoption of the 2018 service delivery strategy for Athens, Clarke County, City of Winterville, and Town of Bogart. Anyone wish to address that or have any questions?
I make a motion that we approve it.
Have a motion for approval.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay,
Mayor, if I might add,
yes, sir.
that's been worked on for the last year. That represents a lot of cooperation between this body and the City of Winterville Council and the Town of Bogart Council. And for the taxpayers out there, just to let them know that this agreement makes sure that people aren't paying twice for the same service or duplications of services. So it's all worked out, what the county provides and what each city provides. So it's required by the state, but it's something that protects the taxpayer.
Thanks for that clarification. Okay, we will now move to our planning department items. And we have somebody who's signed up for, and we handle these one at a time. So the first one, item number 9, is a request from Jim Warrens for Alewind Enterprises Incorporating for rezoning from conditional use in an employment office district to CG Commercial General Plan Development on 6 acres known as 4300 Atlanta Highway. And the proposal is for an auto sales. And we've got one person that signed up for the 10-minute slot. Mr. Warrens?
And CarMax. CarMax is a Fortune 400 company which opened its first store in Richmond, Virginia in 1993 and has been in business continuously since that time. They now have 189 stores in 41 states, with the exception of one location that moved about a mile down the road because they needed a bigger space. They have never closed a store. And I mention that because we're talking about development of the Atlanta Highway and concerned about what happens with big box facilities out there. If approved, the CarMax location will be next to Athens Ford. It'll be across the street, basically from Sam's, and it'll replace an existing auto junkyard. It'll be a tremendous improvement to the Atlanta Highway. CarMax is asking for 2 waivers. The first waiver is to not have planted islands within its sales display area. The parking area that's available for public and for its employees will comply with all of the requirements of Athens-Clarke County as far as having plantings and islands and so on. But the sales display area is a unique thing with CarMax in which they have all of their cars behind a locked gate, inside a guardrail, and packed in closer than what a normal parking lot would be during the vast majority of the time that will be full of inventory. So we're not concerned so much with asphalt except for the drive lanes, because you'll have the surfaces of the metallic surfaces of the cars to reflect sunlight. In asking for this waiver, they propose an alternate compliance in order to comply with the purpose of the ordinance, and that is to help with both heat abatement, because trees, as we know, absorb heat. Trees also give off moisture, and they help in this regard. There are 36 additional large canopy trees plus 19 Shumard oaks, and I found out that Shumard oaks are what we all call red oaks around here. But 19 of those were in the base plan to meet the tree requirements, and then additional 36 large canopy trees. And they'll be planted around the perimeter of this sales display area. The perimeter trees will be Foster hollies, which grow to be between 15 and 25 feet tall, autumn brilliant serviceberry, which grow to be 25 feet tall, and Musashino zelkova, which grow to be 45 feet tall. The Society of Municipal Arborists voted the Musashino zelkova as the 2016 Urban Tree of the Year. It's a hardy tree, it's drought resistant, and it provides good leaves and good cover. The other waiver that CarMax is asking for is a waiver of the lighting limitation in the sales display area, again, only in the sales display area, from 14 to 23 feet, and only from dusk until 10 p.m. This increased lighting is to allow customers to view the vehicles after dark in the same way that they could be viewed if you went out there during normal times. CarMax stays open till 9 p.m. They're the only dealership in this vicinity. There's 6 other dealerships. They're the only ones that stay open till 9 o'clock. Almost everybody else closes at either 6:30 or 7, the exception being Landmark Dodge, which stays open until 8. After 9 o'clock, people need to have time to finish up with their customers and move them off the lot, deal with any last minute sales. And then also they have a person who does a sweep of the lot to just look at all the cars, make sure that none of them have been dinged up or that nobody's hiding out in the lot or anything before they close it down. At 10 o'clock, the lights would be scaled back to the regular 14. And this is done out of a regional headquarters. So we don't have to worry about some employee out here walking out one night and forgetting to turn the lights down and them staying on. It's an automated system that's computer driven, and like most big companies like this, they're interested in the bottom line. They count the pencils, and so it's an important thing for them to have the lights turned down. Commissioner Neesmith was gracious enough to come and meet with me and to look at this in depth. And we went over the lighting plan, and while the request was for 23, we found that most of the lighting was in the 19 range. There were a few places where it was 20 and 21. And so he asked me if CarMax could live with 19 and if he could put forth a commission-defined option to lower that request from 23 down to 19. We're more than happy to do that. That will satisfy the purpose, and it'll fit within the lighting plan that's part of the documents on display or on file with the planning department. Again, what we tried to do was to make this the minimum waiver, and I think I sent all of you a sheet that had times so that in the summertime, for example, during daylight savings time, is that when daylight savings time began on March the 12th, is basically you're talking about an hour that these would be on. On July the 5th, which is the sort of the longest day of the year, according to the internet thing I looked at, however accurate that was, is it'd be about 50 minutes. November the 1st, when we switched back off of daylight savings time, it would be 2 hours. And on December the 21st, which is the shortest day of the year, it still only be on for 4 hours. So we're not asking for it all the time. It's just during those limited hours for that limited purpose. The other, one of the concerns that the Planning Commission had is, are we giving CarMax an unfair advantage? And as I said, the other car dealers don't stay open as late as CarMax does, number one. Number two, if you ride out there and look at what's on the ground, the car business is extremely competitive. I think we all know this through our personal experience. And they each have their own ways of wanting to display their vehicles. And a lot of them display them by actually putting them up on the curb. They've got cars out there parked on the right-of-way, which I'm sure is a violation, but not being enforced. There's only two of the dealerships that have planted buffers. And this plan calls for a planted buffer that's in conformance with the ordinance. And we know these cars will be behind the planted buffer because there's a guardrail behind the planted buffer that goes with the security system and the locked gate. One of the dealerships showed up at one of the Planning Commission meeting and said, well, I had to comply with all of this stuff. Shouldn't CarMax have to comply with it? Well, I went out there later on and looked, and there was no planted buffer. And I asked the planning staff, I said, you know, this guy said this, what happened? They said, oh, well, he planted the buffer when he got his requirement. And as soon as he got his CO, about 4 or 5 months later, he went out and pulled up all the bushes, and he's got his cars parked out there in front of him. So the two waivers are extremely limited waivers. They're designed to meet the spirit of the ordinance, to comply with what's necessary. And we just feel like CarMax would be a good addition to the Atlanta Highway. It replaces an existing eyesore. It replaces an automobile dealership that is going to be moving from the Atlanta Highway out to Oconee County. And based on its track record of never closing a store, it'll bring some stability to the Atlanta Highway. So I would ask that you would approve this rezone, that you would approve the waiver of the trees inside the sales display area, and that you would approve the commission-defined option to limit the foot candles to 19 during the hours that we talked about. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Warrens. Anyone else wish to speak to this item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Mr. Neesmith, you want to address this?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You guys know me. You know I anguished over this. I had a really good meeting with Mr. Warrens, and when I really studied the tree plan, which has these remediating very large shade trees around the peripheral, and then I began to understand that the fact that there are shiny cars sitting on the asphalt actually remediates a great deal of the heat sink that I was most concerned about for not having shade trees on the parking lot. There will probably be, I can't say this for a fact, but I would imagine there'll be less heat sink in that parking lot than in a regular mall or retail parking lot where the cars just aren't that numerous. And so my commission-defined option accepts the waiver for the tree plan, and then it changes the waiver for lighting to 19-foot candles. And if you think about, for example, Quick Trip, they wanted 50-foot candles. So this is a very reasonable thing. I think that the fact that they're not going to have, like so many of our dealers have who have been grandfathered into our lighting ordinance, have very, very bright lights in their parking lots. And those lights glare onto the highway. And they're also breaking the law, the state law, not ours, by parking on the state right-of-way. I think this is a very reasonable request. So I'd like make a motion to approve my commission-defined option, which was drafted by Bill and reviewed by Brad.
Second.
A motion and a second. Ms. Spearman, would you read the ordinance, please?
Yes, ma'am. An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens, Clarke County, Georgia with respect to rezoning a parcel of land comprised of approximately 6 acres located at 4300 Atlanta Highway from EO Employment Office to CG PD Commercial General Plan Development and for other purposes.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item, item number 10. There's not any change. Okay. And our last item under this part of our meeting is for 2 ordinances. One recommended by the Planning Commission, and the other is a commission-defined option. And it's proposed text amendment on applications, deadlines, and deadlines on demolitions. And the other is a Planning Commission recommendation that we will learn about in the discussion, I believe. So anyone who would like to speak to one of these, to this item, please come forward. Item number 10. Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail. Would any commissioner like to
Yes,
discuss?
Madam Mayor, thank you. So the commission-defined option, which was also written by Brad, reviewed by Bill, changes that delay between when we allow the pulling of the demolition permit to occur after commission review, changes that to 18 months when they have to pull their demolition permit or it expires. And it cleaned up some language that had to do with site plans and floor plans, so that the site plan is asked for when appropriate, and then you can jump in anywhere, Brad. And a floor plan is asked for when appropriate, rather than saying one or the other, either one will do, which is what the unintended consequence of the original language was, in my opinion. Is that close enough? Got it. Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve my commission-defined option.
Okay, your commission-defined option, does it cover both items?
Yes,
in
ma'am.
one commission-defined option?
Yes, ma'am.
We have an ordinance, Mr. Behrman.
An ordinance to amend the Code of Athens, Clarke County, Georgia with respect to applications and deadlines, review of exterior demolition or relocation applications, and for other purposes.
I'd like to go ahead and second the motion. I know we've got questions.
Okay, we have a second, and
We got the same thing.
I'll give Melissa the first one. It seems like y'all hands going at the same time, but then that's
Yeah.
right.
I have a question. Brad, what is the cost to file for one of these demolition applications?
$80?
Okay, so it's
Just
not an
about.
exorbitant cost if the time were to run out and they had to refile? Okay.
He's right.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear because I was trying to match what came after the pink page from the Planning Commission and wanted to make sure the commission-defined option did capture everything from the Planning Commission, just a little different format because they listed the sections. Is that right? And with the 18 months versus 5 years, I just wanted to make sure that gave someone enough time to move a house. I had one recently demo that turned into a relocation, but it took them a lot longer. And what would the step be if they needed more time?
Brad, let me take a poke at that. This doesn't change the time they have to demolish, or move. It changes the time when they have to pull the demo permit. Right now, if you approve a demo or let it pass, then they can take forever to pull their demo permit. This makes it require them 18 months to pull it.
So
Correct, Brad?
That's what I'm just checking, double checking the language. If not used within 18 months, yes. Used until a demolition permit has been issued and the approved demolition or relocation completed. So it does, the way this is worded right now, it requires the demo to commence and be completed within that time
Oh, that
period,
wasn't our intent.
instead of just coming in and pulling a demolition permit, and therefore, I think if we didn't have that language in there, though, what you may still see is you could be issued a demolition permit, never act on it, but the issuance of the permit then would grandfather the review forever at that point. It would.
So they have to pull the permit, but the permit can take,
They've got to pull the permit and do the work within the 18 months. But I mean.
it's not the way I understood it when we reviewed it last time.
Either.
No, it
So
wasn't.
I think I would like a little more time. Let me just see how a substitute motion of it being 2 years, 24 months, to have this act of demolition or relocation happen.
I'll second that.
I have no objection to that amendment.
Okay, so substitute motion and second. Melissa, did you second?
I'll second it. I prefer 2 years.
Mr. Harrod?
I mean, I don't really have a strong feelings one way or the other. It's only a difference of 6 months, but I do have a question. Just so I'm clear, is the motion that we're talking about right now, does that also include the other changes that come after the pink sheet? So, for example, dealing with the situation as we have now with when a commission seat is not open, we're also talking about those?
Yes.
Okay.
And that was really the basis for bringing this to you in the first place. Since we had it here, the idea of a time limit and cleaning up some language was just added benefit.
No, I mean, I'm fine with that. I just wanted to be clear.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Okay, have a motion and a second for the substitute motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Well, that finishes up our business for tonight, and we're down to the point of our last opportunity for citizen input. If anyone in our audience would like to speak to us about any item not on the agenda, just come forward to the mic.
My name is Aaron Lewis Gregory. Hello, Melissa. Good luck to you, Kurtz. What I would like to bring to your attention today is a situation that we have as far as our drug policy in Athens. What they did in Atlanta is they showed some leadership on this issue, and they brought it down to a $75 fine with no imprisonment. There's a lot of people that didn't show up today because they're terrified. You know, they're in the closet. I'm in the closet. Well, I'm coming out of the closet right now. I think this law is based on, bigotry, which is intolerance. And I'm just not okay with that. What I have here today is just some legislation that they passed in Atlanta as far as getting this decriminalized. I would like to offer this to the council. I'd like for it to be brought up to a vote. Today would be great, but I understand that you might want to review it. If not today, next month. And that's it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else wish to speak to us tonight?
Good evening, everybody. Bob sends his best. He's working for a 911 service just north of here. First of all, thank you for your concern about the commission candidate who experienced having to tell his emergency twice through our dispatch system and then have a delayed ambulance response. I understand this is a big deal for this one individual and his family, but there are hundreds, probably thousands, that have had this experience in the past and will experience this in the future as long as the current business model of abandoning zones is in place. I wanted to begin to address the piece of paper given to you by the EMS Oversight Committee about why, in their opinion, response times don't matter. First of all, I feel it a little bit suspicious that after years of refusing to release response time data, that now all of a sudden they've taken the position that response times don't matter. Most of the bullets on that piece of paper had to do with red lights and sirens, I think 14 out of 20. This is a little bit odd because National EMS responds to medical emergencies with red lights and sirens, as they should. Secondly, we have known about this data since the 1980s, which is why we tell medics when approaching the scene where there's a heart attack patient to cut their lights and sirens a couple of blocks from the location. Lastly, if you're returning to the hospital with an extremely time-critical heart patient who needs a life-saving procedure, then it gets a little tricky with red lights and sirens, and you just have to make your best choice. I've told National EMS and the Oversight Committee before, we are not asking you to drive faster or to drive dangerously. We are simply asking you to be closer and to stop abandoning zones. Another interesting component of the handout was an article they quoted from the Great Ambulance Response Time Debate. The person asking that question in that article, do response times really matter, is the associate director of a for-profit emergency medical service, and he was speaking to a conference of for-profit EMS providers. What they didn't include in their handout is the very next line after he asks that question reads, and I quote, "Obviously, there are certain high acuity calls that require a timely response, i.e. cardiac arrest, trauma shock, myocardial infarction, to name a few," end quote. And these are exactly the calls that Bob and I have been talking to you about. I want to end with some new research from the United States Army Institute of Surgical Research as it relates to trauma. And all the Army's research or the military's research on trauma is directly applicable to civilian applications. There are organizations dedicated to doing nothing but transferring it to civilian use. And I quote, "The first hour after a medical trauma has long been viewed as the difference between life and death," according to the U.S. Army Institute of Surgical Research. Cutting the average transport time in half, cut the fatality rate in half, equating to 359 lives. That's 359 potential Gold Star families that are not Gold Star families, because they've observed this idea of the golden hour, and now they even talk about the platinum 10 minutes on getting people to a trauma center for surgical intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to address us tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll come behind the rail, and this is the time that we get reports from our elected officials and staff, and I just noticed that we've got 2 Boy Scouts joining us tonight. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you being here. Are you working on your Eagles? Right. Come back to see us when you get it.
Mayor, these are 2 of the senior Boy Scouts at Troop 1, Colton Hanna and Dylan Wyrick. I'd like to suggest that we ask the Scoutmaster to have them come back since they didn't enjoy one of our more robust meetings.
Well, they may enjoy it more in just a few minutes. I've got several things, or a couple of things I need to bring to the commission tonight. One, I want to enter into the record the committee appointments for the SPLOST 2011 Oversight Committee. And we've actually already, Allison announced these for me in my absence at our agenda-setting meeting, but we put these kind of things in the record in our business meetings, but they needed to have a meeting and could not have a quorum, so we went ahead and did that appointment. But they're Joel Katz from District 4, Amy Andrews, District 5, Dennis Hopper, District 6, and Lee Smith from District 9. And I'd like to thank these people very much for being willing to give their time and talent to us, and look forward to seeing what they bring to us. And a quick reminder to our commissioners, our boards and commission applications are due on Friday. So if you've got constituents that are wanting to apply for one of those jobs, they need to get those on in to us. And also our evaluations of our charter officers. I need those back from y'all too. And this is something that I do very rarely, but for some reason tonight I think it's the right time to address this. And I'm sorry the young man said his piece and left relating to the marijuana issue. But I think that I need to go on record as to what my position is and why it has not been on the agenda and why it will not be on the agenda while I'm mayor. And I just gave you a scenario. If we passed a parallel ordinance, which is what this is referred to, has been done in Atlanta, Savannah, Clarksville, some other places, and made possession of marijuana an option to cite as a misdemeanor under a local ordinance with a small fine, $7,500. You could have we could have one of our officers observe a drug deal going down on a corner between two 18-year-olds. The one who was purchasing the marijuana, if he purchased less than an ounce, could be cited under that local ordinance and given a small fine or citation where he would be responsible for a fine, going his merry way. The young man who sold, or lady who sold the marijuana, would have to be cited under state law, which would be possession with intent to distribute, which would be a felony charge, and they would be arrested and booked, and would end up having a record. And the argument is to say we don't want to ruin lives for small amounts of marijuana. But what we would be doing is we would be choosing which lives we decided to ruin, because I think we would be sending some very bad mixed messages to the young people in our community. And although I think in most of your lifetimes here, maybe not mine, that marijuana will probably be legal in our country. Right now, it's a Schedule I drug from a national level. It's illegal under state and national law, and I think it would be a disservice to our community for us to pass a local ordinance of the kind that's being requested. And so with that, I will see if Mr. Manager has anything to bring to us.
No, ma'am.
Mr. Bierman?
No, ma'am.
Ms. Maddox?
Nope.
And I think tonight we'll start with Mr. Harrod, with our commissioners. Thought I'd catch you off guard.
I don't really have too much to say other than there is a fabulous festival that will be taking place this Saturday out at Southeast Clark Park. We're hoping that the weather will cooperate with us. It's just going to be great. There's going to be music. There's going to be lots of activities for kids. There's going to be a business expo highlighting some of the great things that happened on the East Side. And it's really a celebration of the East Side, and it's a free event, so please come out. And we hope people are going to be there to, as I say, to enjoy the music, to enjoy activities for kids. There's yoga, which is probably won't see me doing any yoga, but there will be somebody doing some yoga. So lots of great things, and as I say, it's really a celebration of the East Side, and we hope people will come out and have fun.
Well, I'm looking forward to being there with you. Ms. Bell?
I'll be quiet tonight.
Thank you. Are you going to let other kids in the bouncy house, or are you going to hog it all yourself?
That's just for me.
Oh, okay, that's what I thought. I just have two requests. If y'all remember last budget, we put into the budget the youth home build program. I guess I'd like to see a status on where that is. And I know you the manager sent something to us recently about a plan for the other $100,000 that we put for the beautification projects. I'd like to see how much money is left in both of those projects. I don't think the youth build has been awarded yet, and my point is this: we've got another budget coming up here soon, and I was hoping that money would have been used during this budget cycle so that we could see if we needed to add some more to the next budget cycle. So I don't want us to get in a situation where we're waiting to the last minute, and all of a sudden this money then goes back into the general fund, and then we have to reallocate another $100,000. The plan, my intent was to keep this going so each budget cycle, so that we, or at least so we can start seeing a big difference. I didn't want it to just sit in the bank, and I don't think our constituents want the money that they pay us just to sit in the bank, instead of being used for helping make this community look better, or helping to create some economic activity for especially some of the younger people in our community. So that was the intent of that. So I hope as we start developing the budget that we remain true to that intent. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Address that?
Oh, yes.
Commissioner, just today, I signed the purchase order to award the $100,000 to Athens Land Trust.
Okay.
We went through an RFP process. That did take some time. I do apologize, but we wanted to make sure that we used the monies that you all had dedicated for these purposes to a program with the most optimal results. So that is moving forward.
Okay, good, thank you. If I can just get that update on about the
Yes, sir.
flowers, the
Of course.
trees, or whatever, daffodils, whatever you want.
They're being spent on the east.
Yeah.
Mr. Neesmith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I applaud that, Blaine, very much.
Yeah, that's good, thank you.
And also the work that's, the cooperation that you're working on with Georgia DOT for gateway improvements. And I look forward to an award on that one, hopefully, from the Georgia Department of Transportation in the near future. We've got some great ideas cooking. I also want to thank Drew Ressler and Jason, who's responsible for street paving, and Blaine for meeting me with me today on a particular street that I had concerns about. They gave me great information about why that street is not on the paving list now, and it made perfect sense. And now I can explain it to those who live on that street, which is always nice. And also knowing that the street paving is about to resume. I got a phone call today about that, so I look forward to, perhaps you can give us some dates and neighborhoods in the near future, as we talked about today. And again, Transportation Public Works, I had 2 neighborhoods in the last couple of weeks call complaining about their street signs. One of them said, my street signs are old and they're nasty and they need to be replaced. Well, guess what? We replaced them that week. What a coincidence, huh? I mean, now that's a good commissioner, isn't it?
It's nice to get a pat on the back, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all you, Jerry.
And another one, their signs needed to be straightened, and they got right out there and straightened 70 signs. So that was great. It's just typical of how responsive our staff is when we have issues to be resolved. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Hamby, did you
Yes,
have
I'm
something
sorry,
more?
Commissioner Bailey, but
right.
sitting between Commissioner Neesmith and Commissioner Harrod, it gets a little deep over here, so I forget what I need to say about some things sometimes. And one of the things I wanted to say was about our insurance program. And recently, I know we're having some questions and issues regarding out-of-network versus in-network with the current Blue Cross Blue Shield that are representing our interest. And I would hope that as we talk about this at our work session coming up, that there will be another alternative that can be presented to us. I certainly think, when insurance companies mess around with the health of our employees, then we need to take a second look at who we're doing business with, and I hope we'll do that.
Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I really don't have much to say. I was teasing Jerry about being a good commissioner. Of course he is, but our staff does make us look very good, makes our job much easier, and I appreciate the folks that I deal with, from the clerk to the people at Transportation and Public Works, Solid Waste, Public Utilities. There's so many departments that, and Planning. I guess Brad's still around here somewhere. Anyway, they're all very cooperative and efficient, and they do want to help the best they can.
And all those first responders that run
Oh,
toward
yes.
the danger. Yeah.
That was really impressive. I
Was.
must say, I was, it made me feel very proud of our citizens and our first responders.
Mr. Neesmith, did you miss something?
Oh, I'm in deep over here too, so I did want to say I've been observing our EMT forces out there at responding to accidents, and they are really getting out there, and I know we're going to be seeing a plan to even further fortify our EMT responsiveness with some more training and so forth, and I think that's a real key thing for us to do. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to thank you for having that presentation today. That was very informative, and I'm glad that we had the contacts for the citizens to join in. I don't have really much to say, but I think the manager missed a good moment to tell us about on page 93, the Paving for Pizza Domino's grant that we have. And Jerry, you might want to look into that for your district. So evidently $5,000 for paving repairs on Jackson Street for Domino's. I guess Domino's is wearing out that road or something. But anyway, just another grant that's coming in, and so that's in our packet. And I just wanted to highlight that because I thought that was funny.
Do we get paid in pizza?
Got extra topics.
Paving repairs on Jackson Street, and it's a grant from Domino's. Am I getting that right?
You are, and I want to give Justin Johnson and Drew Ressler credit for that. They found that one and went after it.
That's all.
It's Link.
I have a question about a grant. A month or two ago, we approved the application for the Vision Zero grant for a community input process in the West Broad neighborhoods for some traffic safety improvements. Was there an award yet?
I have not heard that.
Okay,
but I
so
will
we're still
follow up.
waiting on it.
I'll let you know the status.
Okay. And I also have a question. The gentleman that spoke about EMS, have we been given access to that response time data?
No.
Can we request that?
We have requested it.
And we still haven't gotten it.
That's right. And, the Oversight Committee, there's a lot of information in there that they don't want to share that's with that. And, we're depending on the Oversight Committee, who are made up of, the folks that are overseeing that, to give us information. I've asked Justin to put together sort of because we're hearing things, and it's hard to understand the entire context. None of us work in that industry, so I want us to put together a paper that describes how these services are being provided, what our role is in it, what are some best practices, and so that we have, a common platform to talk from and understand and ask further questions.
And I also wanted to address the demolition review. We put a 2-year time limit on when a demolition request can be made and when the demolition has to actually occur. And I want to talk a little bit about the implications that this has to some of our historic properties and some of our in-town neighborhoods. And we do have a neighborhood that's facing an entire block of homes in a National Register Historic District that are facing demolition when the moratorium runs out next month. And I've had a lot of conversation and meetings with folks in that neighborhood, and the folks in that Reese Street corridor would really like to see at least their area, the immediate Reese Street area, rezoned to single family. There is a petition that has quite a few homeowners' signatures on it. And I'm just wondering what the process might be for getting that started. This is a working class neighborhood, a lot of older folks. They're not able to get to meetings, and they're not really well versed in the lingo of planning and zoning, which is not many people are. It's heady stuff. So, this moratorium was proposed the same time that a moratorium was placed on the Millage Circle community for historic preservation, to pursue historic designation. I feel like it should be treated equally. That neighborhood has had some planning department-led meetings and is pursuing this process, but there is no process it's set in stone for pursuing a rezone. And I would ask that the planning department maybe take some initiative and have some planning department meetings where there's official outreach to the community to have, to start that ball rolling. The time is running out, and these folks are very concerned about their neighborhood. And, one big benefit of the single-family rezoning is that the infill housing ordinance would apply to this neighborhood. So it would help preserve some of the homes. So I'm going to ask that move forward.
Yeah, just 2 items, and one's a follow-up on some earlier questioning about EMS, and I appreciate the prospect of a package that can sort of define the continuum of activity that happens between National, the hospitals, and of course our fire department as well, who lends a hand. I have to say, it is somewhat frustrating that an organization to whom we're providing $100,000 a year can't themselves package some information for us. I would hope that any organization that we do business with, for whom we contract for services, would be willing to do that. In another matter, I have gotten a lot of questions about some of the tree plantings on the loop, but I want to focus tonight not on that, but on some that we're doing on our own streets, which is Epps Bridge. We got a memo about some median landscape work that was being done because of some overgrown plants in the median. what I would like to see us do, just as a sort of matter of policy, is have a couple of templates that we could use for medians like that, as well as for shoulders. And I know that there are some both height requirements and species requirements around that, but one of the things as we come to budget time, we always have questions about is the extent and the timing of mowing on those shoulders and on those medians. If we could have something that was relatively low maintenance, that didn't require the mowing crew to be out there, even if we had some upfront costs associated with it, I think that would benefit us quite a bit. So I just want to propose that kind of as we go in maybe to this next cycle.
Thank you, Mayor. So I've got a few things. We got some information from the manager's office about the Georgia Power Ready program for the solar panel system. That's kind of weird. At Cedar Creek Water Reclamation Facility. We know we're going to get a quicker return on our investment, but how fast is this all going to happen? What can we expect? Like, how soon will the project take off and launch?
Well, we have to formalize the agreement with Georgia Power, and there is a quick fuse on it. They want to see these things built fairly quickly, and as y'all know, y'all have already approved an installer for that. So everything's, our next steps right now are finalizing the agreement with Georgia Power and concurrently moving the notice to proceed forward.
Okay, and when, I can't remember, it's construction, what, a year, 6 months, 9 months? Do we have any idea?
I think it's on the order of 6 to 9 months. So before the end of the calendar year. But let me double check that and I will follow up with you.
Okay, I have a couple other requests. I've had a few residents that use the Wiggly Field, right, know what it's called, Wiggly Field, mention that the crosswalk, the actual pavement is not actually marked. It's just black. I mean, you've got the two, and this is at the end closest to Cedar Shoals, not the closest to the neighborhood at the other end. But the actual walk across isn't striped. I just think that might be helpful as people approach to see that, because sometimes the shade and stuff, it's kind of hard to, there's not flashing lights at that one, I don't think. I think the flashing ones are further up towards the park. Isn't that right?
Crossroad Davis.
It's the one in between, it's right in front of the dog park, not further down in front of World of Wonder.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's not. I don't go through that way all that often, but I don't think that one's a flashing RFB. I've also, because now we've started, getting a lot of activity at the park, I've had a request for an on-demand traffic light at Southeast Clark Park entrance. I was actually going through there last night about 8 o'clock, and a huge group of intramural soccer players were, you could see the line of cars all the way back up into the parking lot. And they were having some difficulty getting across, the traffic. And people start picking up their speed about there too. So something to, I'd like for us to look into that, see if how much that would cost and if we could do that. I've also, as we're getting prepared for July, I've gotten some requests lately about fireworks and the limits of those, distance requirements and hours. And I'm not as familiar, I guess I should be more familiar with that law, but I've had a lot of dog owners concerned about fireworks until 2 or 3 in the morning or whatever. And, people who have PTSD and other issues, if we could maybe look at that, perhaps maybe make some adjustments maybe locally. I don't know if that's something that the mayor would have to give to a committee, but it's something I think we ought to at least consider looking into, because I've had quite a few people who are closer together, the houses are close together when they're shooting them off. It just really sends animals into outer space with that. So the last thing is, I would like to invite everyone, as Commissioner Harrod said, to the first annual, because we intend to do this more frequently, East Side Athens Spring Fling. It is free, as Commissioner Harrod said. It starts at 11 o'clock this Saturday, April 7th. Rain or shine, but it's going to be shining. No rain dances. At Southeast Clark Park. There will be food trucks. There will be bands playing from 11 until 6. Elf Power is our headliner for those who follow music. We have kids' activities, BMX skateboard demos. We have a business expo with 24, I think, local businesses that will be there, mostly East Side. We'll also have a hybrid bus. Athens Transit is doing a promotional with their hybrid bus, and we'll have one of the new hybrid buses running between Southeast Clark Park and the Walmart outparcels, the two outparcels that are there on Lexington Road, about every 15 minutes. We're working with Cornerstone Church for additional parking in case we need it. I do want to point out that this was organized back in December, actually maybe even September of last year. Andy and myself and Michelle Roche, who's a local publicist, started talking about this. We've been talking about it like for 2 years, but we finally sat down and put pen to paper and worked it out. And we really didn't, I don't think until about 3 weeks ago, we really thought this was going to happen, even though we've gotten quite a bit of sponsorship. We are in cooperation with Athens Land Trust, and we are this is actually what we raise. We're raising money from this. Right now, we're sitting around $4,000 that will go to Keep Athens Clarke County Beautiful, to beautify the Lexington Road corridor. Specifically, it has to be used between Southeast Clark Park and the Loop. And so this is presented by Synovus. They were our lead sponsor for this event. I hope everybody will come out and join us. And with that, I motion for adjournment.
Do you have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thanks. Night, everybody.
Andy's not going to be singing at that.